This is a content warning, a warning that is meant to advise. This is an opinion piece, and I can't make that clear enough. This is entirely anecdotal and based off of my personal life experiences and observations. This is not meant to be presented as fact, but merely a suggestion, an introspective look at our society through a critical lens. This is not based on any study or publication through a peer review process. This is subjectively observational and nothing more, and may have no actual basis in reality at all.
Hi, welcome back, everyone. Before we go any further, I want to illustrate this. This is a commentary on the reported supposed collapse of the family unit and or family values that is constantly reported by right-wing pundits. I submit the possibility, and only the possibility, that perhaps this is not the result of policy, government, or progressive politics. That perhaps this is not even political or even a social issue, but rather the cause of bad decision-making on the part of parents. This is an anecdotal observation that predominantly the biggest and most frequent perpetuators of this issue are the ones saying it is an issue at all. More specifically, the ones claiming to be the cause, or claiming it to be the cause of diversity, LGBTQ rights, equality for women and people of color, are the ones that are the guiltiest of breaking family units by their very own hand, due to their very own bias, bigoted, judgmental, and hate-filled views. These hate-filled views are often the inspiration that lead to abandonment, are giving up on their children instead of accepting personal accountability. It seems it is much easier to blame it on everything but one's own self, and the decisions made that have negative impacts on their own children's lives regardless of age. The overall message is that one should never give up on their family or children, and to never stop loving them. Obviously, there are instances of abuse where this may possibly be necessary. Again, this also stems from the idea that one even has the right to be abusive towards members of their own family. Thus, they blame things like feminism or progressive values, thinking, I'm willing to stick it out, when in reality, it is the failure of the abuser to recognize they are indeed the problem. Within the sphere of white conservatives, typically Christian, but not limited to, they have been complaining for a long time that the quote-unquote family unit is broken. I can't speak as to how the entire conservative crowd feels about this, but many of them claim that quote-unquote woke ideology is responsible for this. Things like LGBTQ rights and equality, women's rights, and equality especially leaning towards women's reproductive care, and the rights and equality for people of color. Now, I want to be very clear about this. The position that is being given here is going to be based on anecdotal evidence and is highly subjective. I do not have any studies to back this up, but what I will be drawing from is a lot of very real personal experiences and observations. This by no means is something I am creating based off of studies from academia or investigative journalists that have been peer-reviewed and published. I am merely presenting this as a question of possibility based off of personal observations. I would also like to add that this is a very complex matter with many variables that play into it. A broken economy also plays a big part of it according to actual studies that exist. So now that we understand this, it is just an introspective look at this issue. What I propose is that the family unit is not being destroyed by progressive policies and social movements at all. In my life, I have dated and known many people of color from many different cultures, not just black people, but Hispanic, Asian, just many types of people. What I do propose is that white people are destroying the family unit, their own idea of it themselves. In all my wanderings, I have very rarely seen a family from other ethnic groups participate in what I am about to explain. In fact, they would never do this to their children. The vast majority of people of color tend to never give up on their kids. This is broadly speaking, it's a generalization. I cannot say this for a fact. Especially those who live in middle to lower class. In fact, the only ones I have met that have done the same to their children as white families are those that live in upper, middle to upper class categories. It's not progressive policies and social movements destroying the white family unit. It's white people doing it to themselves. I have never really seen a family of Black or Hispanic people kick their children out of the house at age 18 just because they are 18 and considered a legal adult. I have only ever witnessed white people doing that, generally speaking. I have never seen a family of non-white people look at their adult son or daughter whose home just burned down to the ground and say, no, you can't stay here. I have only ever seen white people do that, generally speaking. Within white people's family, there is a heavy burden of blame on anything and everything that happens to their children as being their own fault, despite incidents that are beyond their control. It's your fault you decided to live in a shit apartment that burned down. It's your fault you got a worthless shit degree you can't do anything with. It's your fault you landed a shitty job with a shitty pay cap. The parents in white families always put a heavy burden of blame on their children instead of acknowledging that some things are genuinely out of their control. The problem, all the previously mentioned issues have been done in the name of survival. They get kicked out of the house just for being 18 years old. This is not the decision they made. The parents are the ones that made that decision. They seek out a 2-year degree as a means to obtain employment out of necessity, as seeking out aspiration and greater income may not be practical. Again, this is not a choice made out of desire. It is a choice made out of need, as they had been kicked out of the house at 18 years of age into a sink or swim situation. They move into a cheap or bad apartment, not out of deliberate choice, but as a means of survival from the initial sink or swim situation, which then leads to the apartment burning down with nowhere to go. Once they have nowhere to go, they show up at the parents' 5-bedroom house where only the mom and dad live by themselves. They are told, no, you can't stay here. It's your fault we kicked you out. It's your fault you chose a shit degree. It's your fault you got a mediocre paying job that led you to living in that shit apartment that burned down, which is also your fault. Then we have one more person living on the street, and maybe they live, maybe they don't. It's not society, it's not the government or progressive policies that are forcing white people to give up on their kids. It's not society that's making people kick their kids out of the house simply for being 18 years old or LGBTQ. That's the parents making that decision to put their own kids into a situation that is literally a dire sink or swim. People are breaking the family unit themselves from their own greed, selfishness, and bigotry, bias, and hate. I have rarely seen a family of color do this to their kids. Typically, people of color, generally speaking, based on personal experience, let me remind you of that, tend to let their kids stay with them while attending college until they are ready to take care of themselves, be independent, and ready to take care of a family of their own. They let their kids stay that are LGBTQ even if they don't agree with it. They certainly would never say, well, you're on your own, when their house burned down and have nowhere to go. They typically say, of course, you're welcome here until you can get on your feet again. They do not do this because it is the conservative or traditional thing to do. They do this because out of all the people in this world, the only people you can always count on regardless of the situation is family. The entire world could hate you. And you could have no friends, but you always have family. There's no exception that family is the most unconditional connection that should be the only guarantee in this world, in this life. It's family. White people no longer do this and seem to have forgotten how to even live with several generations under one roof in one house. The older generation needs to realize how things have changed that are things beyond your child's control, like inflation. Stop kicking your kids out before they are ready to take care of themselves. Stop giving up on your kids because they make mistakes and fall off wagons. Or stop giving up on your children because they are living a lifestyle you do not appreciate. They are still your kid. Stop ignoring the reality that the days of economic prosperity are nigh. Stop pretending that your child wanted a 2-year degree in history or business and end up being a manager for a hotel. Stop pretending they didn't make these decisions based on necessity and need, not desire. Stop acting like you don't know that your kid is hurting for money because of avocado toast, and realize that every property has more than doubled in price while income has stayed stagnant. The fact is, they are broke because property values have gone up. Utilities have gone up. Food, medical care, clothing, and literally everything has gone up in price. For all intent and purpose, we could essentially hit another Great Depression, and so many older generations aren't looking at the second coming of another Great Depression. They will blame their own child to avoid responsibility. If we are going to play the could have, should have, would have hindsight game, then how about the parents look in the mirror, because none of it would be an issue if the parents had made the decision to not have unprotected sex. The parents having unprotected sex is the only reason why the kid exists in the first place, and parents treat their kids like they are a novelty item. You want to have a kid, but you don't want any of the responsibility that comes with that. That includes helping take care of each other, even during economically tough times. White people are doing this to themselves. No one is forcing you to put your kids in these situations and then lose touch with what is going on in the world. It's not your kids' fault you are unaware of the current job market and the housing market. Again, that's on you for putting your head in the sand. Maybe it would be helpful if we saw some price decrease in basic needs like housing, medical care, food, and utilities. We are not talking about gaming consoles or stupid crap. We're talking about housing. We're talking about basic needs. Maybe part of the harsh reality is that the parents have supported policies that have benefited themselves and no one else. The harsh reality that maybe some of the policies parents have supported are the cause of their own children's turmoils, concerns, issues, and problems. Women's rights are not responsible for an individual giving up on their kids. This is a personal decision made by an individual. LGBTQ rights are not responsible for an individual deciding to give up on their kids. That's a choice made individually and independently of social and government or policies. People of color are not responsible for you, an individual, deciding to give up on your kids. That's all on you as an individual. Maybe it's projection in that these parents are not wanting to take responsibility for the decisions that have had negative impacts and consequences on their children. Maybe bigotry towards families of color comes from the jealousy that they don't give up on their kids to ensure they are more successful than your own. That they do it without the argument of tradition or conservative values. They do it because literally, and I mean literally full-fledged, to them, blood is thicker than anything else in this world. To the people of color that do this same thing to their kids, maybe this is why they struggle to succeed. Maybe it's not progressive values destroying the family unit, but rather conservative values. The idea, which I have only seen in households that claim to be conservative or traditional, to give up on their kid and kick them out just for holding a political position opposite of their parents. I can't think of a more petty, pathetic reason to break up your family than because your child doesn't share your political belief. I have seen conservatives do this. It's your anger and intolerance or inability to cope with your child that is progressive or LGBTQ or dating someone of a different ethnicity that's breaking up your family. Not the fact that your child is progressive, LGBTQ, or dating somebody of a different ethnicity. It's all you. It's your greed that keeps you from taking in your kid when they fall and have no place to go so that you can selfishly enjoy your 5-bedroom house to yourself. That's your fault, and no one, and or nothing else. It's your lack of responsibility that causes you to kick your kid out when they turn 18 years old because you don't want to deal with them anymore. If they aren't ready to take care of themselves, that falls on the parent who didn't teach them to do that or take care of them until they could take care of themselves. That's not society. That's not progressive politics. It's not government, LGBTQ people, women, people of color that are causing that. This is a direct result of a parent who made the decision not to be there for their family when things get hard, when things get tough, when family is what is needed most. No one is saying you can't have a traditional family, and no one is keeping you from having one. The moment you decide to break your family, take responsibility for your actions, which include the life you helped bring into this world. So what I'm saying here is that from my observations, like lived experience, this is, like I said, not based on any study or publicized or published review or anything. Just observation. A lot of families I know, particularly white, I have seen some people of color do this, but really not very often. Really not. There's this big issue. It's like, I know several people who have been disowned by their parents, white people who've been disowned by their parents, like basically kicked out of the house even before age 18, kicked out of the house as early as 16, because they were dating a black person. I have seen predominantly white families do this. I've dated black men. I've dated Hispanic men. I've dated Asian men. I've tasted, believe me, I have tasted the rainbow. I've dated many, many different types of people. Typically speaking, I have only ever seen white people tell their LGBTQ son or daughter to get out of the house for being LGBTQ. I'm not saying that doesn't exist in the households of people of color. I'm not saying that at all. I would be willing to bet that does exist somewhere. I'm saying in my personal life, I have not seen that. Even if they don't really appreciate or like LGBTQ, they don't support rights. They may look at their son or daughter that's LGBTQ, in the case, be a boyfriend, they might look at their gay son, dating me at the time, and say, ew, gross, I don't like it, but, of course I'm not going to kick my gay son out, regardless if they're gay. It doesn't matter that I don't appreciate it. That's my son. I've seen that. And I've seen white families go, what? You're gay? Get out. I had a boyfriend that was living in his car by age 16 because he was gay. I've met trans people that were living in their car at, again, very young ages because of being trans. 16. I have seen black Hispanic people who don't appreciate that their son or daughter is gay or lesbian or trans, but they typically don't kick them out just for being LGBTQ. Or because they dated a white person. And in my case, me being the white guy that their black son or Hispanic son or Asian son was dating. White people tend to do that. Very racist white people. And if I stop and think about the number of women I know that have been disowned by their family for dating a black man, it's actually kind of sad. It's not kind of sad, it's very, very sad. That's all it took. They're not even LGBTQ. I mean, just like a white woman dating a black man or a Hispanic man, and the family says, get out. Get out. I even know a girl who got thrown over a couch because mom found out that she was dating a black man and then disowned by the mother. It's not women's rights. This idea that what I said in there mentioned at some point about the abuse thing. If someone's being abused, it's a good thing that women can leave that situation now. Being abused is not healthy. And typically, the abuser, in the instances that I've had bear witness to, this has been white people. The guy involved is typically, has always, in every circumstance that I can think of, has always been conservative. And they take on this perspective of, I'm willing to work things out. I'm willing to stick it out. The woman's the one that left. But the thing is what makes you think you have the right to abuse your wife and your kids? You blame progressive policies predominantly in this situation. The thing being blamed by the abuser is women's rights because the woman takes the kids and divorces and goes away. But the abuser needs to take a good hard look in the mirror and realize, no, the reason why the family unit broke up in that situation was because of you. If you're abusive, you're the reason why the family unit broke up, because you're abusive. You need to work on yourself and stop being abusive. You don't need to be abusive. I should find an abuse number to put across here, so that if anyone is abused, to call that number. But typically, well, not typically, this channel is not for kids. So, a lot of the people who say that the family unit is broken, family values are broken, and blame it on politics and the government, like, I think it's unbelievable that people want kids to learn how to balance their checkbook in school. You know who taught me how to get a credit card, open up a bank account, balance my checkbook, and all that? My father taught me. Not the school. My father taught me that. I went to school to learn other things, like about space exploration and the Challenger, and about other countries and cultures and our history, the world's history, the nation's history, math, the alphabet, phonics, spelling. Those are the things I learned at school. My dad taught me how to apply for a credit line and how to write a check, open a bank account, open a savings account, all that stuff. And you don't do that in school. And a lot of the times I have seen this, like, I have known a lot of people of color that will stay with their parents far into their 20s, like late 20s. Why? Because they don't make enough money and they're not quite ready to establish being independent and secure. Like, maybe they'll be independent, but they're not financially secure, that while having the responsibility level to be independent, the parents don't want them to move out because they're not financially secure, and the groundwork is too shaky. It would be too easy for them to fall. No, they don't want their kids to leave until they know for sure. Like, a lot of the times, not even an apartment. We're talking like they even help their kids find a house. Wait until they've got a job that pays well. They've got a savings, a 401k, and even help their kid get a house with their wife and their own kid until they move out. I don't see white families, white people doing this. It's predominantly white conservative traditionalists that say that the family unit, the family values are broken. But it's typically, from my personal observations and experiences, it's typically white families that are kicking their kids out as soon as they turn 18. They don't have to be LGBTQ. They don't have to be dating somebody of a different ethnicity. They don't have to have an oppositional political perspective. It's just, oh, you're 18, get out. And then they literally sit there and wonder, why didn't you finish college? Or why did you finish it so quickly? Why only a 2-year degree? Why a shit job? Well, because you kicked them out at 18 years of age, where they maybe, and if they don't know how to be responsible at 18, again, that falls on you, the parent. That's your job, to teach them to be responsible and how to take care of themselves. Prepare them for whatever comes their way. And if you're kicking them out at 18, there's no way they're going to be prepared for everything that comes their way. And that's where you as a parent need to be there when those things happen. But a lot of times they're not. It's just kind of like, you're 18, you're on your own. I don't care. Figure it out yourself. And if they fall, it's always, it's your fault. It's your fault. Everything is the child's fault. It's the kid's fault. They never take a look in the mirror and go, why did I kick my kid out at 18 years old, and then ignore them? You know, they're calling me up asking, how do I get my furnace fixed? My car broke down. What do I do? And all these other, like, taxes, and how do I get a mortgage? How do I get out of apartment living? My house burned down. Can I have a place to stay? No. Figure it out for yourself. You're a grown adult. It's almost like they're not even your kid at all. I have seen this in white families. And out of the people of color that I've met, I'm not saying they don't exist, but out of the people of color I've met, I've never seen that. I've not seen it. I actually know a guy who's mixed, and his house actually did burn down. At the time, I was in my 20s. He was 46, almost 50 years old. And you know what? His parents let their 46-year-old son come and live with them until he could get on his feet again, because his house burned down. That is a real story. I have seen that happen to a white person. Pretty much very similar story, different age and stuff. But no, they don't do that. So if you think family values are broken, the family unit is broken. If you yourself are a parent, maybe you should look in the mirror and think, what have I done to help my kid, my child out there, gain security, financial security, security of having a roof over their head, making sure that they're going to be fine when you're gone? What have you done? You know, did you kick your kid out because they were LGBTQ and then sit there and wonder why they become homeless and sit there and blame them? Did you kick them out because they dated somebody of color? And then have the audacity to blame their shortcomings on them when it's you that gave up over really, really petty things. The zealotry of the anger and animosity that some of these people feel, these right-wing zealots, these conservative traditional people, I think it knows no bounds. And they have the nerve to say, it's the government, it's society, it's progressive policies, it's politics, and maybe it has nothing to do with politics. Maybe it's you. Maybe you need to stop blaming everything else but yourself and realize, no, you played a hand in this. You set your kid up for failure. Like I said, I know other families, they would absolutely open their door for their child if they needed it. So, again, this is not based on any peer-reviewed study or investigative journalist reporting or anything. This is just observational from me, lived experience, personal experience. And I'm saying maybe this is what's happening, what's going on. Maybe family values is not broken. Maybe you just forgot how to do them. You know, like these white supremacists, these fascist people, these neo-Nazi shitty people, they talk about how Hispanic people live in households with all these people living in one apartment. Well, yeah, that actually used to be normal. It was very, very common. You know, you want to return to older times. Well, guess what? In older times, it was very, very common that you would have multiple generations living in the same house. Now you have people living in 5-bedroom houses because they lived during an economically prosperous time, which we do not live in anymore. And you're looking at your kid who lives in you know, a closet in someone's with 5 other people in a studio apartment because that's all they can afford, and you're blaming them. And meanwhile, you're sitting there in a 5-bedroom house with just you and your wife, and you won't even give them a room when things just fall apart. Yeah. That's not what they used to do. They used to literally live in the same house you'd have several generations living in the same house for a long time. So, food for thought. That's what this is food for thought. Just think about it. Just think about it as a possibility. Think about it. Maybe that has something to do with it. And you can let me know what you think about that in the comments section. I don't know if it's right or wrong. I don't know if it's correct. I don't know. Anyway, like, share, subscribe, comment, all that.